Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Join us today as we talk about developing your career and company. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Simon, and I am your host for today. We are going to do our June career article today. It's called Increasing Your Employment Value. And I think, actually, the article for today probably shouldn't be titled Increasing Your Employment Value. It should be Increasing Your Employee Value. Because, of course, this career article, is split into two sections. And today's lesson is actually about how to attract good employees to your company. It's not so much about how to be a good employee. Nonetheless, it is an interesting article, and we're glad you're joining us for it. When I say us, I'm talking about my panelists today. I have two of them. Manya, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Simon. I'm very excited to dive into this article.
Manya, we're talking today about perks or benefits that offices can offer. I'm going to ask you in a minute what perk you value most when looking for a job. So you think about that while I introduce our other panelist today, my good friend David Morton.
Hello, Simon. It is so wonderful to be here today.
David, it's good to have you. I'm going to ask you the same question as Manya, so you should think about that now.
All right.
Are you ready, Manya?
I will.
Tell us, what kind of perk would really be valuable for you? And when I ask this question, perk is spelled P-E-R-K, and it just means benefit. We hear a lot in the news about different benefits that various companies offer. A famous example of this would be Google, where they have places you can sleep and there's free food and all of these wonderful things. What kinds of benefits would really attract you to a workplace?
Well, honestly, health insurance, like good insurance is a huge perk.
You are American. We should share that with our listeners.
I was going to add that in. I'm like, well, being an American, I think that is a huge
Because I
perk.
have never lived in a place without public health insurance. And to be honest, they always add that in job ads. Like they say, we pay health insurance and labor insurance. I'm always like, of course you do. Why would you even spend the money to add that in your ad?
Right.
Because it seems so obvious that, of course, they will have that. But I guess that isn't true for everyone everywhere.
Correct. In the States, that's not the case. It really depends where you work. You get different types of benefits.
Well, don't worry, Manya. If you need new teeth, you can get them. No problem.
Awesome.
All right.
David, tell
Yes.
us, what benefits do you really look for in a company?
Well, Manya had a really good one. Health insurance. I think that's also, as an American, that's a very big perk for me. But since you said that one, I think that I tend to gravitate towards jobs that have a good kind of work-life balance. Sometimes with your job, you can't help having to take it home with you with certain jobs. But I really appreciate a job that I'm able to work and do and grow in, but then also have my own life, have my own projects. Because I'm someone who has a lot of hobbies. So for me, work is only one part of my life. And the other part of my life is being able to work on personal projects and, spend time with people and stuff like that. So if I have a job that enables me to balance things like that, that is a huge perk for me.
Now, you said work-life balance, but then you went on to explain that specifically when you're talking about work-life balance, you're talking about not having homework.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, basically not so much homework. Yeah.
Okay, now that's interesting, David, because I would also say that work-life balance is very important to me. At least it was in the earlier years of my career. But I wouldn't have talked so much about not having homework. I would have talked more about flexibility. So one of the things I've always really prioritized is when you're finished your work, if your employer gives you tasks to accomplish, when you finish those tasks, it feels so wasteful to me to stay in the office when you have nothing to do. So the freedom to do your work and then move on with your life, like flexi time, I guess you could call it flexible time,
Right.
was the thing that was really valuable to me. But it's interesting, as I get older and my career develops, I would say the thing that is more appealing about a job now is actually the chance to do interesting things that are challenging. Because that really has an appeal. I want to work on projects that I find very interesting and challenging. So that's the sort of thing I would look for now in a job. Well, this question we have just answered is basically the question that they are answering in this article, except it's the answers of many, many people put together. Today's lesson is specifically called The Most Coveted Employee Perk in 2019. And basically what we are getting here is the results of survey data when people are asked, what is the perk or the benefit that you most covet? Now, covet is a word we're teaching here. What is it when you covet something?
Well, when you covet something, it's like it's usually used in a negative sense, right? Like in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not covet, right? It means if you want something that someone else has to the point of thinking about just taking it.
It's kind of closely connected to the word envy.
Right.
Like when someone else has something and you kind of want it.
Right.
But I think coveting usually lacks the feeling of jealousy. So it's just, in this sense, they're not using it in a negative way. They're just saying it's something you wish you had, basically.
Yeah. They're using it here in a positive sense. So it changes the meaning slightly.
Good stuff. So we're going to find out what it is that employees in different places are looking for in a job. Now, the idea here is that if you are a manager or you own a company, then being able to provide these things to your employees will help you attract a higher quality, more competent and capable, competitive, I guess, employees. And in many places around the world, the job market is getting tight, meaning there is a lot of competition for workers at this point. And so this is the sort of thing that might really help you out. Well, that brings us to our first reading. Listeners, you will find the first reading on page 38 of your Advanced Studio Classroom magazine. We're going to read the left-hand column on the lesson for June 24th. Let's do that reading now.
Increasing your employment value. Good advice for creating a positive work atmosphere and how to prepare for a promotion. The most coveted employee perk in 2019. Successful leaders with big visions of greatness for their organizations know they can't go it alone, which means making sure employees feel like the company cares about their happiness and well-being, especially during times of extremely low unemployment, when it's easy for your most talented employees to find a better job at another company. Here are 3 reasons why your company should focus on enhancing its work-life balance benefits in 2019. 1. Most companies still aren't doing it, which makes you more attractive as an employer. Old school managers are struggling to figure out how they can manage performance without tying it to the clock. If your definition of a good job is butt in chair, then it's going to be hard to let go. Meanwhile, companies that have well-defined OKRs, objectives, and key results have a much easier time trusting employees to get their work done, regardless of how much or how little time it takes them.
Welcome back, listeners. That was our first reading. Now, we find out in this reading that successful leaders with big visions of greatness for their organizations know something very important. Now, before we get to what they know, Manya, I'm going to ask you what they know. David, tell us, what is a vision of greatness?
A vision of greatness means you have big plans, big dreams for what something can become.
Okay, so when we talk about a vision here, we're not talking about seeing We're more, I guess, sort of artistically talking about seeing the future of what your company might be, right? So, Manya, what is the thing that these visionary leaders know?
They know they can't go it alone. They can't complete their vision without other people, without help.
Oh, interesting. So you can't do it by yourself.
No.
That's the idea. If you try to do it by yourself, your great vision won't work out. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting lesson. Well, continuing on with the reading, it said, which means making sure employees feel like the company cares about their happiness and well-being, especially during times of extremely low unemployment. Now, that's what we were talking about when I mentioned that term. It's a tight employment market, meaning there are lots of jobs and not enough employees to fill all of those positions, right? Mm-hmm. But why is it that successful leaders need to know this and make these employees happy in this situation? Tell me about what this has to do with getting good employees, understanding this idea.
Well, I feel like if a employer knows how to make their employees happy, right, and to make them feel satisfied with this place, then that means that not only are they going to be holding on to employees longer, but they're going to be holding on to employees that are going to be actively improving upon the company that you started. You know, like they're going to be having, like you have a big vision for the future, but then they, feeling secure in this job that you've given them, are then going to find ways of like, oh, hey, you know, this is a really great idea. How about we also do this? How about we also do this? They're going to be more likely to want to invest themselves into your company, and that's going to expand your vision.
It's very easy sometimes to take the unwise path of believing or assuming that because an employee is in a low-level position or a lower salary position, that they are easily replaced and so not so important. The problem, of course, with that is that replacing employees actually takes a lot of work. Yeah. And so it is to your benefit, if you are a boss, to keep employees for as long as possible, especially if they're doing a good job, and more importantly, to get good employees into the right position. So what we're talking about here is how to make your company attractive to people you're trying to recruit, so you can get good people into the right position so that they'll stay in that position and be there long enough to help you build your vision of a better company. Well, they give us here in this article 3 reasons why the company should focus on enhancing its work-life balance. Now, David, that's the term you used. You said you care a lot about work-life balance. Can you just very quickly explain to us what that means?
Yeah, work-life balance is basically just being able to balance the time you spend at work and the time you spend just doing life, you know, whether it's hobbies or whether it's taking care of yourself, your fitness, working out, you know, having a not overworking, also not underworking, but having your time to work, having your time to live, and having a good rhythm for how you do those 2 things. Okay,
and so the perk here that we can assume companies really covet is this work-life balance. And, you know, we know from when we shared that can sometimes come in different forms. It could mean like not being called in to work on the weekend, but it could also mean being given flexibility. Especially, we talk about that a lot with parents, people who are parents, you know, because they need to do things when their children are sick or, you know, when something is happening at school and they need maybe to leave early sometimes, things like that. So that's the flexibility. All of that rolls into this idea of work-life balance. So you don't feel like you're a slave at your job working all the time with no freedom to live your own life. Okay, they give us 3 reasons here. The first one is most companies still aren't doing it, which makes you more attractive as an employer. Well, Manya, here, most companies still aren't doing it. What is it they are talking about?
I don't know.
Oh, it's a tricky one.
Yeah. I know. I looked at this for a long time and I thought, I'm not really sure exactly what they're talking about.
You know, listeners, this is often described as a grammar problem that's actually very common in English. It's called pronoun antecedent. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It basically means the pronoun, the word like he or she or it, you aren't clear what that thing is, who you're talking about. It does take some thinking here. My guess, and it is a guess because this isn't necessarily the most clear of statements, is that it is the work-life balance.
Right.
The idea being that most companies don't offer benefits that give people a good work-life balance. And so if you do, you are a very competitive employer and very attractive to potential employees. And my guess here is that it means work-life balance because they say, which makes you more attractive as an employer, suggesting like, if you do this thing. Right? Okay. It goes on in this point to say old school managers are struggling to figure something out. Now, what are old school managers, David?
Old school managers are managers that still run their company kind of according to the rules of, 50, 60 years ago, even 30 years ago.
Are these people students?
Oh, no, these are usually going to be older professionals that have been doing business for a long time, like a generation or even 2 generations before.
So this is like a phrase, a way to describe people who are kind of traditional or old-fashioned.
Oh, right, because it has the word school in it, but they're not students. Yeah.
You didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when you say old school, it means traditional. It doesn't always mean something bad. I mean, I think a lot of old school things are quite good. And when you think of like old school music or fashion, people tend to find those things very attractive. Like the Beatles are old school, right?
Okay.
But in this case, they kind of mean it just traditional, the same as it used to be.
So basically managers who've been sort of traditionally trained, they've had traditional work experience, they're struggling to figure out how they can manage performance without tying it to the clock. Now, what do we mean when we say like performance being tied to the clock? What is that about, Manya?
Well, I think in the traditional sense, people work from 9 to 5. That's sort of what it was like before. And so I think here they're just trying to say that old school managers are used to having their employees do their tasks according to a timetable.
Yeah, or even more importantly, just the idea that employees should, to use another phrase, punch in at a certain time and then just be in the office until it's time to punch out. And that phrase, it just refers to those cards you put into the machine that puts a stamp of the time on it. They used to use them to pay people when they're being paid by the hour. So this traditional idea is that the employee is being paid to be at the office for this period of time, as opposed to being paid to do certain work. And that's exactly what I was talking about when I said I look for a lot of flexibility in my work-life balance. I like to be a busy person. I'm often working on many different projects at the same time, a lot like you, David. But wasting time just kills me. It makes me feel like I can't even come up with words, listeners. All I can do is that sound. It makes me feel So this idea of old school, they use a phrase here, butt in chair mentality.
Yeah.
What exactly do they mean when they say butt in chair?
It means you're just sitting at your desk the whole day.
Your job is to sit at your desk from 9 to 5, and then if the boss gives you some work, that's your job. You got to do the work while you're there.
Right.
And so if your definition of a good job is butt in chair, then it's going to be hard to let go. So it's not only managers who have a hard time with this. Sometimes employees also have a hard time with this, right? This idea of being self-motivated and really wanting to be engaged in different projects. Okay. Then they use this strange term. They say, meanwhile, companies that have well-defined OKRs. They give us a definition there. They say objectives and key results. Now, objectives and key results, they're presenting them here as an alternative, a different thing than this butt-in-chair thinking. So I guess the old school way of thinking about a job is you're paid to be here from 9 to 5. And can you tell me what would it be like if a company was using an OKR approach?
I think it's sort of like, instead of saying you just have to sit here from 9 to 5, it's saying, okay, these are the things that we need to accomplish by this time. If you're able to accomplish these things, then that's what we're really paying you for, right? Not just for the time, but for your ability to accomplish these tasks and accomplish them well. And I think that is more effective because it's more clear. You know, it's like burning cleaner fuel. You know, everything is very direct towards a goal, not just sitting around.
It's a whole different way of thinking, though, this kind of idea, because I know often in school, for example, we reward students for trying hard. So if they try hard, we sort of like allow that to go. But in this kind of OKR environment, trying doesn't actually matter. It's just sort of accomplishing the goal that's been given to you, accomplishing the task. So if you get the task done, that is the important thing. And then you're sort of free to move on with your life. So this idea of putting in time and getting paid by the hour and these kinds of things, it's just a very different mentality than this approach. But as it turns out, employees value this because if they are very efficient and they come in and they work very hard and they complete their work quicker than other people or more quickly than other people, then there's no reason for them to sit around for 4 hours until they can go home and spend time with their families or do something else they care about. And so the sort of thing that's attractive to employees, but in particular attractive to employees who are good at motivating themselves and things like that. That brings us to our second reading. We're going to look at points 2 and 3 in our article. They are on the right-hand column of page 38. Let's look at them now.
Two, your employees will become talent magnets for your company. Fact. Employees love to brag about their great work-life balance to friends and family. Want to have an easier time finding and hiring top talent? Creating an incredible work-life balance program will save you thousands in recruiting costs. That's because your employees will be walking employer brand billboards for why the best people work at your company. 3. Working smarter, not harder, is a sign of strength. Companies with a leadership team and staff who are well-rested, happy, and believe their goals can be achieved in a reasonable amount of time are more trusted and respected. Not to mention, studies show they perform at higher levels too. If you want to look like a stable company on a sustainable growth track, getting the job done in less time is the way to do it.
Okay, so point 2 is your employees will become talent magnets for your company. Manya, what is a talent magnet?
I think it's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a magnet that attracts talent.
We have a great picture that illustrates this on page 38, but doesn't really illustrate it the right way. It's not actually a magnet. The point is it's something that attracts people to the company. And they actually explain this very clearly. It doesn't require too much discussion at all. They say, fact, employees love to brag about their great work-life balance to friends and family. And I think that is absolutely true. When people have good benefits, they like to tell other people about it. Want to have an easier time finding and hiring top talent? Create an incredible work-life balance program. And that, of course, will save you thousands in recruiting costs. Well, why will it save you so much money recruiting people, David?
Well, because if your employees are bragging about their great work-life balance and other people are going to hear about it and they're going to be, hey, you know, like maybe I should apply at this place. Maybe my talents could be useful there. You know,
that's right.
It'll basically recruit itself, you know.
When I told David Morton that we have free chocolate and fruit here at Studio Classroom, he was like, do you have a job opening there?
Yeah.
Can you get me in?
I checked on my phone that day as he was talking. I sent in my application.
He called me every day for 3 months until a job opened up.
So, Simon, you could say, like the article, you were a walking billboard.
Yeah, but none of that is true, listeners. I did not bring David Morton here, but we have given you a clever skit
Indeed.
that illustrates this point.
And there was often free chocolate and fruit at our job.
We
Actually.
have many benefits. That brings us to point 3. Working smarter, not harder, is a sign of strength. Now, this kind of goes to speaking about what we were talking about at the end of point 1, where we said, you know, sometimes employees just want to work efficiently and quickly, finish their work, and then go home. right? And that's kind of the idea. It says companies with a leadership team and staff who are well rested, happy, and believe their goals can be achieved in a reasonable amount of time are more trusted and respected. Not to mention, studies show they perform higher levels too. So if you can get your employees to be, happy people that are living well-balanced lives, then they work more efficiently, they get things done, and you can trust them. They're more reliable because they're happy with the situation and the role that their job plays in their lives. They also say here, if you want to look like a stable company on a sustainable growth track, getting the job done in less time is the way to do it. So there's a benefit for the whole company when your employees are working very efficiently, right? It's good for your reputation. It's actually good for your expenses as a company. It's a wonderful deal for everybody. So the lesson from today is that the coveted employee perk is work-life balance. And that means a variety of different things, but it is a great benefit to companies if they can achieve it for their employees. It puts you way ahead of the competition. Thank you so much for joining us for today's program. Be sure to join us again tomorrow as we continue with our June career article. Until then, I'm Simon.
I'm Manya.
And I'm Dave.
Saying bye for now.
See you later.